Who's brewing?
Yeah, I do. Well, I could do something like Scott Manley doesn't do a space update. There's so much going on now. Like, God. We're live? It is 7 o'clock. All righty. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Warren Astronomical Society. I'm Bob Tremblay, your president. And so, do we have any first-time attendees tonight? No first timers. Okay, so if you want to renew your membership or via PayPal or the website or by that gentleman right there in front of me, he will gladly take your money. So as a tradition, we like to do a roll call, go up and down the ranks. So hi, I'm Bob Tremblay. So Dale, you're next.
Dale Phoebe, David Lacy, treasurer. Dale Harkin, first vice president. Bob Berta, as will be, but I don't know. Jim Shedlowsky. Mark Kenzier.
Charles Strackbine, secretary.
Tom Goodman and Trammett. And Lord. Larry Hoffman. Sonny Spilos.
Bill Finch,
Ernie Nix.
Steve Long, our carrying member.
Well, yeah. Oh, you are. Hi. Where'd you hear about? All right. So where'd you hear about us? You did. Oh,
You know, simply, and I love your YouTube channel.
awesome. Well, welcome and thanks everyone for coming. All right. So announcements. Oh boy, elections are next month. That kind of snuck up on us. Next Cranbrook meeting. So anyone be interested in running for a board position, please see Mark Kedzier and get Mark has if I said yeah, okay. So WAS wearables are also available from Mark Edger. You can see what's available, t-shirts and such, in our newsletter. And I really have to get one of those, Mark. I'm going to put an order tonight. I've got a 20 I got to give you. I want a t-shirt. I got the money. All right. So our banquet is December. Oh, I don't have the date here. Is that 8th? Is it? 7th. Oh, it's Thursday. So anyway, we have a speaker, Nicole Zellner. She is a solar system ambassador and she is working at Albion College. She does research on lunar samples and she's a real big advocate for women in academia and science. And she's a really good speaker. And she said yes. So we just got I sent her a list of a whole bunch of things she could talk about. And she says, well, pick one. So got a lot of different things she'll talk about. All right. Calendar. We have a calendar coming up. We need pics. Are we getting any pics, Dale?
We have a ton of pictures already.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
So we don't need any more?
Well, if anybody wants to send.
If anybody wants to send any, so also, I'm glad to hear we got so many pictures. Nice. All right. Astronomy at the Beach, our big astronomy event. Michigan's largest free astronomy event is September 21 and 22nd. That's really soon at Mayberry State Park, west of Northville this year. Tell everyone and anyone you know and have them tell everyone they know. GLAC meetings there. GLAC is the Great Lakes Association of Astronomy Clubs. They're the ones who organizes the astronomy at the beach. They're meeting right now, so I couldn't be at their meeting, unfortunately. And if you're interested in an astronomy event, another astronomy event after that, October 3 to 6 is the Great Lakes Stargaze up in Gladwin, which is a good event. Anybody going to that? You are. I should really go to that again. Officers reports. The picnic was on the 24th. It was lightly attended, but Connie and I had a great time. We talked with a bunch of people we haven't talked with before, so that was awesome. See, there is okay, he's not here. Bobiverse Book 5 audiobook was released on September 5th. I blew through it in 3 days. This is one of the things I love about this science fiction series is obvious the author knows and loves astronomy because he keeps putting a lot of really cool stuff in it. You talked to me at the break about this series. So it's one of my favorite science fiction series. So Dale, should I just tell you want to say it or you want me to? All right, Dale you're booked through this year, right? You're looking for short 15-minute presentations and hour-long presentations for next year. He says he has a few people online and I have a couple of lectures I'd like to do. But if you have any topic that interests you at all. We can throw a lecture together, and if you talk to us, if you don't know how to do that, we can help you, give you a hand. See, Riyadh is online, our second VP. Riyadh, what's going on at the observatory?
Yeah, hi, Bob. Thank you. And hello, everyone. Our last open house was during the day of the picnic and in the evening. So the sky actually was clear. We lucked out and we were able to use the 8-inch refractor, as well as Jeff took out the 22-inch Dobsonian outside. We were able to observe a lot of deep sky objects, planets, the moon later on in the evening. So we were open. The observatory didn't close until about 2 a.m. actually. So it was a very well attended observing night, and we had few scopes also set up outside the observatory. So it was very nice. The next open house is Saturday, September 27th, starting at 7:30 p.m. And hopefully we'll see everyone out there.
Yeah, there was a young man. I think he said he was from the Ford Club, and he was set up with his telescope. He's the guy that had the red LED lights on his tripod. I went and talked with him, and he had a battery pack, and I said, "Oh, that's a cool battery pack. Where'd you get that?" He says, "Oh, it's self-made." I'm like, "Oh, tell me." It had a whole bunch of battery stuff in it, a whole bunch of custom-made circuitry, USB ports, powered USB ports, telescope ports, and I was just like, "Oh my God!" And I says, "Where'd you learn how to do this?" Totally self-taught. So I'm like, "Wow, I'm really glad that I know people like that." That guy was amazing. So let's see, any additional space? Okay, people were arriving at our open house before the picnic was done. I actually took my wife home and I came back and I saw people setting up there. The observatory wasn't open, so I went down ahead and tell Riyadh, "Hey, this guy's up there." So David, treasurer, what is going on with the bank accounts?
Okay, so relative to our accounts, as of August 31st, we had $24,648 in our checking account. In PayPal, we had 401.67. Our cash box, previous to the meeting, we had $524. We paid Mark Kedzor some groceries from the picnic, so we're actually at $499. And that's that.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to be probably emptying that PayPal account because we got to get that $400 to GLAC for our tables at Astronomy at the Beach. So by the way, new lady, I'm sorry. We have an observatory at Walcott Mill Metro Park, Camp Rotary. It is on 29 Mile Road between North Avenue and Romeo Plank. We have a free open house every fourth Saturday of the month where we open up the observatory and we have several telescopes on the field, and a good time is generally had by all. Even if it's cloudy, because Riyadh will entertain you the entire time talking about astronomy. So, David, let's see. Charlie, anything to report?
Oh, thanks.
This is our secretary.
Charles Strackbine,
Charles Strackbine.
The September newsletter was published on September 1st. And also I wanted to tell everyone, I bought one of the C-Star S50s, and it's a great purchase. That telescope is a lot of fun, and I learned about it at one of the lectures here. And I thought that
Not
was
very
cool.
long ago.
Not very long ago. Yep. And after I heard the presentation here, I literally bought it that night, and I started having fun with it 2 days after that when it arrived at my house. So it's highly recommended. And that's what I have to say this time.
Wow. My wife was watching right now. She'd say, "Bob, why haven't you bought one of those yet?" And I really don't have a good answer for that. So Jeff McLeod is not here. He's our outreach officer, but I know that there is an event being hosted by the Macomb Intermediate School District on November 2nd, and they're going to be doing the guy that's putting this on invited me directly because he knows me, and I'm going to be set up there at a table. And they're going to be having the same people that set up the STEM bunker at the air show are setting up a STEM event at this thing. So if anybody wants to come and sit at a table, I will get you more info on this. Again, that's November 2nd. So Vichalia is not here, but publications, our newsletters online. I'm sorry, our award-winning newsletter and newsletter editor. So let's see. If you need to get a hold of the board for any reason, you can email us at board@warrenastro.org. All right, so let's start off with our special guest, David Levy. Take it away, David.
Thank you. And after I'm done, Bob, it would be interesting if you could tell us a little bit about Asteroid Day, because it's something that I'm very interested in as well. Anyway, I know later on today we're going to hear something about Russell Porter, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I wish I had known Russell Porter. He was brilliant. His artwork was Michelangelo, and he had a wonderful sense of humor. And so I thought that it's quite possible that with all those qualities, he probably wrote a poem at some point. So I tried very hard to find one, so far without success. However, I did find an article that he wrote and published, underneath of which there was a poem written by Charles Nevers Holmes, who lived in Newton, Massachusetts. And so I'm almost positive that Russell Porter would have known this man and certainly would have been familiar with this poem. So the poem I would like to share with you tonight is by him, and it's called A Perfect Night. No moon and not a cloud, a perfect night. A coal black sky with gleaming gems aglow. A darkling earth with knolls and dales are white and wrapped in raiment of uptrodden snow. Amidst yon firmament in bespangled span, Capella blazes like a beacon's light above the glare of red Aldebaran or Pleiades that glitter small and bright. There Procyon is sparkling all alone. Orion's jewels are a gorgeous sight, and Sirius is reigning on his throne, undimmed as years and cycles take their flight. And where the higher sky gems gleam and glow, there softly shines a golden satellite, or snowbound knolls and dales that sleep below, ere moon has risen on this perfect night. Thank you, and back to you, Bob.
Thank you, David. All right, so let's get some astronomy in the news. Do my obligatory exoplanet update. Anybody not know what an exoplanet is? You know what an exoplanet is? All right, an exoplanet is a planet that is oh heavens, what the heck? It is now. All right. An exoplanet is a planet that is orbiting another star or free floating throughout the galaxy, not attached to another star. And there have been 5,756 confirmed, and there are 7,217 candidates, and we're up 15 and 14. So a little bit, but we are going up every single week, which is really cool. The James Webb Space Telescope spectrum for WASP 69b shows water, CO2, aerosols. That planet is a gas giant orbiting very close to a red giant star. NASA's Advanced Composite Solar Sail System was launched in April, unfurled its sail. It's in a 12U CubeSat, which is something like about like that big. And a spacecraft is currently tumbling. The article says, as expected, and they're going to be undergoing attitude control and stabilize the spacecraft. But this thing is a very thin polymer square that unfurled from this CubeSat, and they're going to be using it to test light pressure sail. So that's pretty cool. So special interest group, now NOVA, again, if we're waiting on T Cora Borealis to go Nova. It's due now, but David says anywhere between now and 2026. So I thought September was the cutoff, and I was so waiting. But David, you said you're looking at it every night. Wow.
Yeah, every night, and not necessarily looking at the star, but looking at the field, because when it goes into outbursts, it'll be clearly visible without a telescope. So that's what I've been looking at. And that's very easy to do, and I do that every night.
All right, solar, there are lots of sunspots again, and spaceweather.com said today a puff of dark plasma is heading for the Earth. A filament of magnetism erupted from the sun yesterday, hurling a coil of cool dark plasma toward the Earth. A NOAA model suggests it will arrive during the late hours of the 10th. Impact could spark a G2 class geomagnetic storm with naked eye auroras in the northern tier U.S. states, which would be us. So on the 10th, look for some more aurora, hopefully. Double star, Riyadh. I know that you were looking at double stars on the 24th, because I
Yeah,
saw a
we-
couple of them.
Oh, yeah, we were, and we'll continue to do that. So
A
next
couple
open house, yeah, go ahead.
a couple first-time El Barrio viewers there, I know.
Yeah, exactly. That's a crowd favorite, and especially with the colors. Now I've been trying to see if we can also look at Epsilon Lyra. The problem is it's been almost directly overhead when we're trying to observe it. So with it here in the way, we can't. So hopefully coming up in the next observing night, next month, we should be able to.
Alrighty, does anybody have any observing reports or astrophotos? So the moon's not out yet. So is it? What phase is the moon right now? It's like crescent.
Waxing crescent.
Waxing crescent.
Alrighty, so
Waxing.
just starting. All right, so if there are no observing
Well, you
reports,
do-
what do you think?
There's one
Pardon
other
me?
thing that you do have a partial lunar eclipse coming up at the next
Oh.
full moon.
When
Just be aware.
which is the 17th, or yeah,
Right.
17th.
It's a partial lunar eclipse.
Righty, so I am going to get set up for my presentation. We'll go ahead and do that bit
Careful.
again.
Well, this is certainly an introduction for someone who needs it least of anyone here. Bob is, of course, our president. He is, am I getting feedback? He's a volunteer NASA JPL Solar System Ambassador, a podcast host, and factotum, whatever that is. For that,
The jack of all trades does whatever sticks to the wall when they throw it at you.
at the Vatican Observatory Foundation. And as you heard him mention earlier, he's on the board of the Great Lakes Association of Astronomy Clubs. They're having a meeting tonight, but he thought we were more important.
Giving a presentation.
They are the group that hosts astronomy at the beach. So he's in the planning group of that. And tonight, he's going to talk to us about the Mirror Lab.
All righty, thank you, Dale. All right, so let's get presentation up and share it. All right. All right. Share. Share sound. This should be doing it.
Seven segment.
All right, so let's start. Did you guys hear that over the net? All right, here we go. These guys can tell it better than I can. Let me show you.
This movie will take you through the spin casting of an 8.4 meter honeycomb mirror. This mirror is one of the 7 segments of the 25 meter primary mirror for the Giant Magellan Telescope. Spin casting starts with building a mold that's the negative of the honeycomb structure. After the mold is built, glass is loaded onto it, the mold is enclosed in an electric furnace, and the glass is melted. While the glass is molten, the mold spins to give the top of the mirror the parabolic curvature that we want. The first part of the movie is a sequence of photos taken one per day during the mold construction and casting of GMT Segment 2. The mold includes a hard tub made out of silicon carbide cement. We build it on the turntable of a spinning furnace. We first lay down the floor of the tub, then add the walls. It's built like a barrel with staves that are wrapped with steel bands to hold it together. These materials will change their dimensions when they go through the heating cycle. So we install the furnace in pieces and do a preheat to stabilize the dimensions. We do a test spin of the furnace at the same time. Next, we line the tub with ceramic fiber and install 1,700 hexagonal boxes of the same ceramic fiber. When the glass melts around the boxes, it will create the cavities in the honeycomb. The ceramic fiber is much softer than the glass and doesn't have any chemical interaction with the glass, so it's easy to remove the ceramic fiber after the mirror is cast. Again, we heat the mold in order to stabilize the dimensions before adding the glass. The glass is O'Hara E6 borosilicate, delivered to us as irregular blocks. Each block was broken out of a larger piece, so the surfaces are pristine and the blocks melt together without any trace of the original blocks. When the glass loading is complete, we reinstall the furnace and raise the temperature to about 1200 degrees C, spinning the furnace as the glass starts to melt. Now we'll change to a view from one of the cameras mounted in the ceiling of the furnace so we can watch the glass melt. It reaches a thickness like cold honey and takes a few hours to flow down the 12mm gaps between the hexagonal boxes. As the glass melts, it becomes transparent and you can see the hexagonal boxes. You can also see some bubbles of trapped air rising to the top and bursting. Here's a close-up view of the side of the mold from a different camera. The side is marked with the height in inches above the tops of the boxes. We want to finish with a glass thickness of about 2 inches, and that's where the glass surface stabilizes after it fills the mold. Once the liquid glass is stabilized, we cool it quickly to solidify, then cool it slowly down to room temperature. Most of the cooling is the process known as annealing, when the atoms in the glass get locked into place forever. Temperature variations need to be very small during annealing, and we achieve that by cooling at a rate of 3 degrees C per day. The whole cooling process takes 3 months. At the end of that time, we can open the lid, remove the rest of the furnace, remove the silicon carbide tub wall, and we're left with a cast honeycomb mirror. It still has the ceramic fiber trapped inside, and it's still attached to the silicon carbide floor tiles. These will be removed in the next step. In order to remove the mold material, we need to lift the mirror off the turntable and move it into a turning fixture. We use a steel lifting fixture bonded to the top of the mirror with compliant adhesive and with the load distributed to minimize stress on the glass. Now we'll switch to a different view. It's actually a different mirror, GMT segment 3, but the process is the same. We'll lift the mirror and move it to the turning fixture. We'll use the turning fixture to raise the mirror into a vertical plane, giving access to the bottom surface. This transfer takes about a day, so we'll speed it up.
Any guesses how much that weighs? 20
Now we'll install the
tons.
mirror in the turning fixture and lift it up.
It was halfway, only 2 inches thick. Spin it around.
We'll bring in an enclosure to protect the mirror and contain the mold materials as they're removed. The enclosure holds an elevator platform, so the technicians will have access to all of the rear surface. They first remove the silicon carbide floor of the tub, then they'll wash the trapped ceramic fiber out of the mirror with high-pressure water. This completes the casting process. We have a light-weighted honeycomb mirror that is 80% hollow.
dropped one.
I've not heard of them having dropped one yet. All right, next. All right, so next.
This movie picks up after the spin casting of an 8.4 meter honeycomb mirror for the Giant Magellan Telescope. It takes you through the grinding and polishing, ending with a piece of glass unlike anything ever made before. 28 feet in diameter with a lightweight structure and a surface accurate to a millionth of an inch, so it can reflect light to form the sharpest possible images. We bond the load spreaders to the glass, then flip the mirror right side up and install it in a special support cell for the critical work on the front surface. Grinding and polishing the front surface are the final steps in the mirror fabrication. They make the mirror so smooth and accurate that if it were expanded to the size of North America, the tallest hill would be 1 inch high. We start with a machining operation to put in the correct shape to an accuracy of 1,000th of an inch. We still have to make the surface 1,000 times more accurate to limit shape errors to a millionth of an inch. To measure the surface, we move the mirror from the polishing machine to the test tower. The most important measuring device is the interferometer, which illuminates the surface with laser light, collects the reflected light, and analyzes it to make a contour map of the surface with a resolution of 100th of a wavelength. We use a set of vacuum pads to lift it out of its support cell and onto a special frame designed for transport. Once the mirror is on the transport frame, it's enclosed in a steel box which is lifted by crane and taken out of the mirror lab. Finally, the mirror is set on a flatbed trailer with special suspension to begin its journey to the telescope.
Ready. So, pretty crazy, huh?
This movie picks up after the spin cast.
All right, so this is done at the Richard F. Karras Mirror Lab at the University of Arizona, and I visited it twice as part of a workshop at the Vatican Observatory Foundation. The VAT is the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope. Their mirror is 1.8 meters in diameter, and it is the first one to be spin cast and the third made at the Mirror Lab. Mind-boggling precision. I like that. Less than 1/20th of a wavelength of green light, 25 nanometers precision. That's just insane.
You might want to point out as a matter of interest that it's in the basement of the football stadium.
Yeah, it is. The Richard here. This right here. If you stop, go back. Am I doing? I don't want debug mode. Right. Take it back. Well, anyway, we'll go forward here. I'm having
This
trouble.
move.
Stop. How do I go there? Right there. All right. If you turn that way, if you look at the sign like that, there's a huge stadium right there. And when we were there the second time, they were setting up for something because the whole area was just filled with football stuff. But so the VAT telescope, the VAT's mirror was made at the Mirror Lab. After it is done being polished, it is coated with a layer of enhanced aluminum coating, which is very reflective. There is the structure of the GMT mirror. It's huge and heavy. The cool thing about this is there's going to be 7 mirrors in the GMT, and they are not parabolas. They're part of a larger parabola. So imagine probably the middle one is a parabola, but the other ones have to be ground in very, it must have been crazy trying to figure out how they're going to grind that. So the mirrors are 20 tons of glass each, and when they're inside their metal shipping crate, it's 55 tons. This is a rendering of what the telescope will look like. And as a zoom in, there's some guys or astronomers or workers or something in hard hats. I guess that's going to be the way you work around these giant telescopes now. Everybody's going to be in a hard hat. So it took 3 years to polish them. They're getting that down a bit. 5 years start to finish. they've gotten that down from 8 years. And I asked how big, what restricts the mirror size? And it's the roads. You have to get them through the roads in Tucson because you're at the University of Arizona. Here is a visualization of different types of mirrors. There's the giant Magellan telescope, which these mirrors are being made for. And they're the same, pretty much the same size as a large binocular telescope, which is, I could throw a rock from the vat over the large binocular telescope. The GMT was actually the catalyst for the creation of the Mirror Lab. When they were originally thinking about how they're going to do this, Corning had made a 72-inch mirror, and it didn't get used, so it went into storage, and the Mirror Lab got it for free. And it was what they were looking for, but Corning couldn't make anything larger, so let's do it ourselves. This is the fellow who it's named after, Richard F. Karras. He donated $20 million to the Giant Magellan Telescope, and he has been supporting of the Stewart Observatory Astronomy Camp, and which I'll be talking about, and other astronomy-related things in Tucson. So this is the GMT site, the Giant Magellan Telescope site right now. It's a big hole in the ground. And you can see there's the road, there's a zoom out. So it has big roads to get those big mirrors up there. Right now it's a big hole in the ground. I believe so, in Chile. On the western side, yeah. I you know what? I knew I should have done a Google map to that. I was like, nah.
It's that picture taken. My information that thing is quite a bit farther.
Really? That was Google Earth like 2 days ago. So I don't know how recently that's been updated. But so here's my obligatory slideshow from the Mirror Lab. So this is a display case with a bunch of chunks of the glass. There's a close-up of the glass. They were the sole customer for the Japanese company that made this glass, but they're not anymore. So there is a mirror being made. There is the furnace top that was moving when I took that picture. There is the transport frame, and that's up with nothing in it, and there's it with something in it. These are 2 different years. It's both 2019 and 2024. There is a completed mirror, and there is them doing some testing and grinding on it. That's a grinder on the mirror. That is a completed mirror, and they're doing testing on that. Look how beautiful that is. So public tours are available. They wanted to make sure I said that now. They just started giving these tours to the public. Now, the other thing we did, how much time do I have, Dale? I have a couple minutes more? Couple minutes more. All right. The other thing we did as part of this workshop for the Vatican Observatory Foundation is we went a couple blocks away to the Gerard P. Kuiper Space Sciences building. Brother Guy is a fantastic docent. If he stops being a Jesuit, he could be a docent anywhere. He took us there, and this is the looking down at the hallway on the sign. This is a cabinet with lunar orbiter 1 through 4 pictures, and we're talking sheets that big taken by lunar orbiter, and there's a lot of them. Very historic photographs, and they've got globes everywhere like that, and that I wanted to take that entire bookshelf home. There was some really cool stuff there, but I did a close-up of these. Here's an American globe from 1970 and a Soviet globe. And if you just turn that way, there's computer workstations, and they're real big fans of giant 3-monitor workstations. I approve. So the University of Arizona hosts some things that the lady I interviewed from the Mirror Lab also wanted me to tell you about. The Sky School. This provides K through 12 students a chance to go up to the Mount Lemmon Sky Center and use a whole bunch of stuff. I went up there as part of it. It's very cool. And astronomy camp. This is something they have that has both adult and teen camps where you can operate 61-inch telescopes and radio telescopes and stuff. So if you want to go do an adult camp, October is still open, but things are going fast. So when it comes to astronomy and space science, we certainly live in interesting times. So any questions? Yes.
Just a comment, the story of how that mirror lab and the process for making those big mirrors is really an interesting one. There was a Roger Angel told you about his story. how it occurred to him about 35 years ago that you might be able to do that. And he used his wife's oven and a small bucket. Realized that mathematically, the surface of a rotating bucket of liquid will give you.
Yeah, that parabola. Yep.
Yeah, that led to he sized it up and so on and so forth. And Garrett's raised some money to build that lab.
Yeah, the woman I interviewed from the Mirror Lab, I found out from Brother Guy later that her husband had something to do with the creation of the mirror for the vat. Yes, Dale.
I got the impression that this lab is sort of dependent on these large donations from a single donor. He didn't look any younger than I.
Oh no, he died in it was dedicated to him in 2015 and he died in 2016. So
how are they doing financially?
no idea.
Those mirrors are being paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they're expensive.
Yeah, there was a whole plan. I think they've already been paid for. Now the thing is, when I went to McDonald Observatory, they had a sample of a hexagonal mirror that they're using in some of these scopes, and then that diagram I showed, there's a lot of telescopes that are using those hexagonal mirrors now, and you can make those really big. And I have a feeling you're going to be seeing more of those in the future. You know, like James Webb is one like that, but there's several telescopes that are using that hexagonal way. I don't know how long this is going to be doing it this way, but. So the mirror size, the 8.4 meter is as big as they can get because of the roads. They can't move anything bigger than that down the roads in Tucson. So, but yeah, this has been the VAT just celebrated 30 years last year, so coming up on 31 years. So they've been doing this for about 35 years now.
You would like a kind of a summary of the whole process of competing technologies. Might look at, I think it was 4 years ago or something like that. The presentation I had in September was on how the evolution of giant telescopes, which talks about the Mirror Lab and talks about the hexagonal mirrors that are used in text and the Keck telescopes.
Yes, if anybody would like to do a presentation on hexagonal mirror telescopes, that'd be great. I'm sure Dale would love to have you sign up for it. All right, any other questions? All right, so let's have our lunch, our snack break. It is 7:40, so that's perfect. Why don't we meet in 20 minutes, 8 o'clock straight up, and see you then.
I have a question.
I have an answer. Let's see if they match.
Plans to create a mirror factory out where it might be employed, but we don't have the trouble with the roads.
Wow. Oh, it's a big facility. It's possible. I know that they're saying that in order the aluminum will eventually you have to re-illuminize the mirrors. They're doing that there on site, but they can't make them there. So
They transport them standing up?
no, it's laying down flat.
Arizona is my alma mater, and that lab has been there for many years. And it was very difficult for me to go to a game with that lab underneath. There, so.
It is literally underneath the stadium.
Absolutely.
And I asked them if they're thinking of expanding so that they can make bigger. And she's like, well, we're talking about it, but she was kind of being cagey about it. But
it is a spectacular place. It really is.
it is. It's a very cool place, and you just the size of these mirrors.
This scope is going to Chile, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And let's see.
How are their roads? I'm kidding.
Well, the roads for the telescope are nice and wide.
I got it.
Intentionally. All right, so take our snack break. Go get a bio. Go get a munchie, and I'm going to set up Jim's laptop. So I'll be disconnecting here and reconnecting with a new laptop.
All right.
Bob.
How you doing, David? David?
Yeah, hello.
I'm going to be coming down there probably at the end of the year, see my alma mater and my family down there. And I'm also going to go out and see Fred Espinek's set up out there in Portal. And
Well, that'll be great. Perhaps we could get together.
I'll give you a call before I come. Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. Good to hear your voice, boy.
Good to hear you too.
CompuServe was bought out by AOL 20 years ago.
All right.
Is that right? So you were on the left. Yeah, that's, well, you got pretty good.
Wow.
Brand new.
This video is weird.
Is that here?
Yeah.
Oh, strictly. Near. Yeah. I wish your brother was still there.
If I could find that brochure.
Okay.
Okay.
You'll see a picture of it.
Okay, and then if I could find the article where I read all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'll send it. Cool. All right.
Can I leave this up here?
And then I can do the rest next time. And don't worry, you have it next time. I don't know.
All right, so you got your lecture events up here, presentation up there. That's being shared on.
All of my presentations are scripted anymore. I need this. I'm gonna make a comment to start with. I'd appreciate waiting until the end for questions. Yeah, good. Cool. Except for where there's even else.
Yeah, I got to turn the audio on. But move that, so I got to make sure the audio is good. You're not going to be playing anything on here? Any videos? No, nothing. Okay, so just you talking. Okay, oh, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, good. I'm going to use some munchies.
You guys gotta send out notices about membership review. Like. If you were getting close No, I'm just waiting until I get it. Send it. It's changed a lot since I was 20 years ago.
Oh my God. Collect some information. My person on the map.
Hey, Bob. I don't know what causes this to happen, but I may have to sign out, sign back on. My cursor is on the screen. It needs to be on this screen. Maybe you know.
I got you with that.
Okay. Got it back here? Yeah, there we go. Yep, cool.
So yeah, it swaps back and forth. So that screen is here. So if you move the mouse
Okay.
over there,
So
yeah. So if I move it left and it's on there, it'll come
put
back.
it back on there. I'm not gonna move much because I'm gonna use the button mostly. So. Okay, thanks. Sorry for the bother. You knew who Russell Porter was. Really? I've been surprised half a dozen people till tonight have already said, oh yeah, Russell Porter, including David Levy. Porter was kind of the godfather of amateur telescope making and amateur astronomy back, and which is the whole story here. So I won't bore you with details.
I'm going to talk about him because I need to know about
If it hadn't been for him, we probably wouldn't exist, and hardly any of the other amateurs groups would exist. You've heard of Stellafane, I'm guessing.
Is there the time already? Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
1 minute. All right, well, let's make
I'm
sure that you're.
gonna stay right up here. I'm just, I don't have to hobble around.
Where's your mouse?
It's right down here.
Your membership would be good.
Make sure that he's talking here.
Okay, great.
Got the audio on, sharing the screen. We're good. All right, we're good to go. We're getting out of here. Yep, 8 o'clock, good to go.
Watch out, check on that when you come up here. Let me get off the street. That's not a problem. Okay.
I think I turned his lectern mic on.
Two items or 3 items. Scott.
Okay, let's get started, everyone. I can't wait to hear our next presentation. Every year, Jim gives a presentation in approximately September here
when we were sitting there together a minute ago, he said, "You can sign me up for next year." Topic to be determined. I love that. So Jim Shedlowsky, longtime member. I didn't look up how long.
22 years.
22 years of the Warren Astronomical Society. Long music history, and we may get a sample of that later tonight. Went to the University of Michigan, graduated in 1960, a little older than me, with a degree in engineering physics. Worked for 36 years in the automotive industry as an engineer and manager. As far as astronomy, he likes to do both observation and outreach to other people. Been around visiting a lot of major observatories. He and his wife spent a winter in Arizona. Must be nice. And he's involved there in an astronomy club called the East Valley Astronomy Club. So he's here tonight with a topic he probably chose a year ago. The many dimensions of Russell Porter, Mr. Telescope Maker. Jim, take it away. Watch out for that cord. Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my annual September Cranbrook presentations, as Dale mentioned. I've been doing this for almost 23 years, but started off with overhead projectors and stuff like that. Some of you remember that. Some of you kids wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. This year I picked a topic which might seem to some of you to be a bit obscure. So I'd like to ask all of you to pretend that you did not read the abstract for the presentation and answer this question. Do you know anything about Russell Williams Porter? If so, please raise your hand. Wow. I would think that amateur astronomers, most of you would know, but I saw about 4 or 5 hands. I'm ashamed. Well, something here is not working. Let me get to the next slide. This presentation will cure that problem that you all have. We'll tell you the story of the interesting life of this fascinating man who, as we shall see, among his many accomplishments, is largely responsible for the popularity of amateur astronomy in the United States. A modest man with an innate curiosity matched by a unique ability to find creative solutions and to challenges and then communicate them effectively by physical example, by his artistic abilities, or by his words. Porter profoundly affected the lives of many. Porter was born in Springfield, Vermont in 1871, an interesting age of change. It was shortly after the Civil War. The Transcontinental Railroad had just been completed in 1869. Levi's were born in 1871. Telephones were still 5 years into the future. Electric lighting came about in 1880 when Edison patented his incandescent lamp. The USA had just become recognized as a world leader in technology and industry. Porter grew up in Springfield, Vermont, a small town with a population of about 3,000, which was developing into a machine tool center, largely because of the water power from the Black River Falls in the middle of town. As a youngster in school, he was undistinguished except for his inquisitive nature and a demonstrated talent in art. Porter's higher education was varied, and he never earned a degree from any of the several colleges that he attended. After a brief stint at the University of Vermont in 1890 and 91 studying civil engineering, he was forced by financial circumstances to relocate to Boston to gain employment
and where he enrolled at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, in 1892 in their architectural program with art study on the side. He was to pursue architecture at MIT on and off for more than 5 years, and while never graduating, he would later teach architecture classes at MIT from 1915 to 1918. His educational continuity was disrupted in the fall of 1892 when he attended a lecture by Robert Peary, who was raising funds to continue his explorations in the Arctic, which eventually resulted in his 1909 claim to have been the first man to reach the North Pole. Porter was fascinated. He said, quote, "Out of a clear blue sky, that evening came to me that undefinable lure known as the Arctic fever. All I knew was that nothing would stop me until I had gone north." Thus began an 11-year period in which Porter participated in 6 Arctic expeditions, during which he learned many survival skills while contributing to those explorations with his emerging talents as an artist, surveyor, mapmaker, scientist, and astronomer. Between these expeditions, he would return to Boston to his studies at MIT and an always waiting job at the architectural firm of Codman and Desprato. This important and extended phase of Porter's life is described in his biography, a copy of which I have up here, but are captured in more detail in words and many examples of his wonderful drawings and paintings, which describe the life and adventures of early Arctic exploration in his book, The Arctic Diary of Russell Williams Porter, which I also have a copy of here on table. His original journal notes and records of scientific observations, along with hundreds of pencil sketches, oil and watercolor paintings, pastels, and pen and ink drawings, are also part of the National Archives in the Center for Polar Archives. They represent some of the most valuable graphic records of the Arctic for this early period of pioneering exploration. During his travels, he became acquainted with the indigenous natives of the Arctic and accurately portrayed them, many of them for the first time. His Arctic talents ingratiated them to him, and friendships developed, which helped him through many difficult situations during his Arctic adventures. His Arctic travel often involved ships in the Arctic ice, which resulted in several shipwrecks. On his last expedition, the Fiala-Ziegler Polar Expedition of 1903 and 1905, he was stranded with 40 mates for 2.5 years on the most northern group of islands in the Eastern Hemisphere at 81 degrees north latitude, about 500 miles from the North Pole, because the ice had crushed their transport ship, the America. This ordeal included 2 130-day winters of darkness without a sunrise. And remember, this was 1903. There was no communication system with the outside world. His many adventures included dealing with the Arctic isolation, bitter temperatures, depending upon dog sled transport, and often living off the land. He was also involved with the planning, logistics, and leadership of these expeditions, learning many skills about dealing with people and problems, often under extreme conditions. The top center slide on this slide here describes his encounter with a polar bear while sketching at 30 degrees below zero and finding out that his Winchester rifle was frozen. You can see his in the picture there. You'll see his notebooks and painting paraphernalia by the bear's foot up there. He developed many life skills during these experiences, but his primary responsibilities on most of these expeditions, in addition to his artistic records, involved scientific work, which would come to influence the rest of his life in a profound manner. It involved the accurate measurement and recording of the time and location of the exploration parties by the only available method at that time, celestial navigation. These measurements enabled explorers to know where they were at, to guide their travels into unknown territories, and to create maps of those new territories. Porter became a very competent surveyor and cartographer and knowledgeable about the optical tools used. One of his most important instruments was a precision transit telescope known as the resolved circle, designed to measure altitude and azimuth to within 4 seconds of an arc. He built an observatory at Camp Abruzzi, that's in the Franz Joseph Island area, about 560 miles from the North Pole. It was from this forlorn location that Porter spent 2.5 years stranded. With this instrument, he recorded hundreds of star transits and occultations through the long winter nights. He marveled at this device, barely a foot square, that allowed him to locate himself on the Earth's surface to within a few feet of the actual truth. This is the 19th century GPS, if you will. Understanding the principle behind these instruments and the mechanisms and mathematics involved with them became a passion for Porter. They all involved the manipulation and use of light to acquire the precision of the universe. By 1906, Porter, now 35 years old, put his Arctic fever behind him and began searching for a new chapter in his life. His life experiences and his curious nature had trained him to become quite talented artistically, well-versed in architecture and a knowledgeable engineer. And his innate curiosity now sought a new challenge. As he looked for a new home, he was drawn by his emotional attachment to the sea. And in the fall of 1906, he purchased a home and 50 acres at Port Clyde, Port Clyde, Maine, 4 hours or 200 miles from Boston. He also married Port Clyde's postmistress. His initial intent was to create an art colony, but it was succeeded by attempts at farming, surveying, and selling some of his artwork. Using his architectural skills, he designed and built 14 cottages, which he first rented and then sold. In 1910, however, Porter embarked on another journey, which was to consume the rest of his life, and which was initiated by a friend from his old hometown in Springfield, Vermont, James Harkness. Harkness was an American business executive, mechanical engineer, inventor, entrepreneur, and president of the Jones and Lamson Machine Company in Springfield, Vermont. He was a Renaissance man, having learned to fly in 1914 in a Wright Flyer. He also went on to become the 58th governor of Vermont. A man of some means, Harkness was also one of the very few amateur astronomers in the U.S. at that time, and had designed and built and patented the first turret telescope in 1910. In February of 1906, Porter had arranged for Anthony Fiala, the leader of his last Arctic expedition, the 2.5 years that he was stranded in the 500 miles from the North Pole. Porter had arranged to include Springfield in his lecture tour. Porter, the hometown boy, was president at the show to the packed house, and it was here that Harkness became aware of Porter's interest in astronomy and astronomical instruments. Sometime later, Porter received a bundle of popular astronomy magazines, one of which contained an article entitled Speculum Making, which caught his attention. The article by Leo Holcomb of Decatur, Illinois, stated that he had built and was using a 10.25-inch reflector. This inspired Porter to think, quote, "If this amateur can make his own telescope, so can I." Thus began an odyssey in which Porter became obsessed with, learning the art of working glass and understanding the principles involved with optical instruments. He procured the English book entitled Glassworking by Paul Hasluck and sent for necessary glass discs and abrasives, built a workshop in his basement, and began creating mirrors. By the time he returned to Springfield in 1919, he had completed a dozen or so telescope mirrors, most of which never got into telescopes. Harkness, the Renaissance man, recognizing the passion and talent with which Porter pursued his new hobby, continued to encourage him, and they kept up a live, active correspondence. By 1911, Porter had built a small observatory to house a 6-inch refractor, which was a gift from Harkness. The unique Harkness turret telescope, completed in 1910, was designed to observe protected from the elements. It challenged Porter to think outside the box. In 1913 and 1914, Porter designed and built a telescope which he incorporated into his house, protected from the elements, using two 16-inch glass discs, again furnished by Harkness. Porter wrote an article describing this telescope and his experiences with it, which was published in the May 1916 edition of Popular Astronomy, the first of many articles for that magazine. The creative interchanges between Porter and Harkness seemed to stimulate Porter's natural curiosity. He then became fascinated with the mechanical design of telescopes and their mountings. He began to use his engineering background to explore various configurations and options. An early example of this design work, completed in 1917 and published in Popular Astronomy and Scientific American in 1918, was a proposal for a new form of mounting for large reflecting telescopes. That's the upper center drawing. This yoke mount design would come back to have significant years later in bringing Porter into the Hale telescope project. The creativity of alternate designs seemed a perfect match for Porter's fertile mind. As his skills in shaping glass mirrors developed, he began to experiment with photographing. Remember, photographing was kind of early stuff at this point. With photographing the shadows that appeared on the mirrors during the critical knife-edge test used to guide the critical shaping of the mirror's surface. He was the first person ever to do this. In June of 1918, he had an article on this work published in the Astrophysical Journal, which was edited by George Ellery Hale. In appreciation for this important work, the French Astronomical Society offered him a membership in their organization. Porter, by now 47 years old, had become a recognized expert in the design, fabrication, and testing of optical devices. In 1918, during World War I, Harkness, now supporting the war effort, persuaded Porter to go to Washington to work at the National Bureau of Standards, helping the country fill its military needs for optical instruments. After the war, Harkness, in one of his leadership roles in the machine tool industry, he was the chairman of the National Screw Thread Commission. He saw a need for a better means for standardization and quality control of screw threads. As an inventor with over 120 patents, Harkness had an idea that the requirements of inspection might be made efficiently available by means of an optical device, which would greatly enlarge the image of a screw and comparing it to a desired standard. In 1919, he brought the now 47-year-old Porter back to Springfield and hired him at Jones and Lamson as the practical optical man to turn his optical comparator idea into reality. It took Harkness's and Porter's skill and several years to perfect this device, but through the years, this comparator would become one of J&L's major products. Porter set up an optical shop at Jones and Lamson and trained workers in the skills of grinding and polishing lenses. His new job only increased his interest in telescope making and astronomy. Only now he had an opportunity to share it with others. He had always felt that professional instruments were out of reach for ordinary folks, but now he could teach them how to build their own. Thus, on August 17, 1920, Porter assembled the first group of 15 men and 1 woman, most of whom worked at J&L, in a room at the factory to learn the skills of telescope making. The first gathering of the Springfield telescope makers. He had arranged with Hartness to use an empty room at Jones and Lamson as a workshop to meet on a regular basis. Porter had ordered the required glass discs and other materials and first instructed the class in the art of mirror making. They worked on their mirrors 2 or 3 nights a week, learning the various steps of grinding, polishing, and testing involved, all under the watchful eye and guidance of Porter. They were all amazed when he told them that they could make mirror surfaces that were 1,000 times more precise than the parts they were used to working on, accurate to within a fraction of the wavelength of light. All but one of these originals completed their mirrors, ranging from 4 to 10 inches in diameter. Porter then instructed them on the optical principles and mechanical requirements required to arrange the other elements needed, the structure, the eyepiece, the focuser, the mount, and so on, into a completed telescope. He stressed that each person should use their individual talents and imaginations to construct their own personal instrument. Thus, the pattern maker might construct his scope from wood, while the machinist could use metal. This use of imagination and talent, as we shall see, has survived at Stellafane for more than 100 years. Clever ingenuity, started by Porter, has become a competitive hallmark of this annual event for any of you who have been out to Stellafane. But the grinding of mirrors and building of mounts and finally telescopes quickly engendered other activities with the now growing group of interested amateurs. There were gatherings to discuss the wonders of the heaven and all-night observing sessions. Porter was an enthusiastic and inspiring teacher, exposing these men to the celestial geography and such notions as Greenwich time, right ascension, declination, ecliptics, and so on and so forth, and showing them how to find deep sky objects by star hopping and to locate the planets. He also gave them a smattering of surveying and measurement of time, latitude, and longitude by using optical instruments. After they had been meeting on an informal basis for several years, it was agreed that a club should be formed, and on December 7th, 1923, the first official meeting of the Springfield Telescope Makers was held, with Porter elected president. The Constitution contained a clause that to become a member, a person must first make a mirror. That's still in force. After they had been meeting on an informal basis for several years, it was agreed that a club should be formed, and on December 7th, 1923, I'm repeating that sentence, must first make a mirror. That kind of caught my attention. The main topic of that first meeting concerned the building of a clubhouse, a project that had been started some months before on a property known as Breezy Hill, just west of Springfield. Porter had inherited the land and he donated it to the club, along with a contribution of cash to get things started. Using his architectural training, he also furnished a design for the clubhouse. All the members of the club pitched in to build it, and when funds ran short, James Hartness furnished the needed additional backing. This clubhouse became their center of activities for observing, meetings, and just gathering for discussions. It was decorated with photographs of celestial objects, telescopes, astro-related stuff. Shelves were added and a library of astronomy books were accumulated. A small kitchen was later added, along with 2 bunk rooms upstairs for overnighters. By early 1924, the main part of the clubhouse was completed, and at a meeting on January 30th of 24, Porter suggested that it be named Stellafane, meaning shrine to the stars, which was later contracted to Stellafane. On the north gable, one of the members carved the words, "The heavens declare the glory of God." During these years, Porter wrote many articles which were published in Popular Astronomy and other magazines. One of these articles caught the attention of Albert Ingalls, an editor for Scientific American, which was the most popular science magazine in America at that time. In the November 1921 issue, it was entitled "The Poor Man's Telescope." This is Porter's article in Popular Astronomy. And in it, Porter described how he had made his own concave mirror and built a reflecting telescope from it. Ingalls also noted a second article in March of 23 relating how a group of Vermont villagers under Porter's instructions had made their own telescopes and became amateur astronomers. Inspired by these articles, Ingalls embarked on fabricating his own modest 6-inch mirror and soon found out that he needed practical advice. Thus, he personally contacted Russell Porter and began what would become an important relationship for the future of amateur astronomy in America. On the weekend of June 12th and 14th, 1925, Ingalls made his first of many visits to Stellafane. During this visit, while getting advice from Porter for his own mirror project, he also spent time with the Springfield Telescope Maker members at Breezy Hill, observing the heavens and talking enthusiastically about their homemade instruments. By the time he left on Sunday, he had decided that there was a basis for an article in Scientific American to discover how much interest might already exist among its readers and how much could be created. With the assistance from Porter, he decided to write such an article, which appeared in the November 1925 issue of Scientific American. This article by Ingalls produced such an extraordinary response. Readers from all over the US and around the world wrote to the editor of Scientific American, urging the publication of practical instructions for making telescopes such as the Vermont amateurs had made and used. There seemed to be a promising audience for such a specialized hobby. Ingalls then made a second trip to Vermont to gather more information and enthusiastically showed scores of these letters to Porter and the Springfield Telescope Maker members. He then invited Porter to prepare 2 articles describing the designs for various telescopes, illustrated by the soon-to-become familiar Porter drawings. These 2 articles were published in Scientific American magazine in February and March of 1926, and it evoked such a response that every issue of the magazine, of Scientific American magazine, until 1948, that's 22 years, contained a section on telescopes and amateur astronomy. I was a young man back in the 40s. Yeah, I was actually a young man back in the 40s. And I still recall reading probably the last couple of years of articles in Scientific American at that time about making my own telescope. Although a few amateurs had been making telescopes for years, the craze was spreading. In anticipation of more articles, Porter was invited to become a corresponding editor for Scientific American. Ingalls earlier research on books about amateur telescope making had revealed that there was only one book on the subject in the English language. And it was not published in the US, but in Northern Ireland. This amazing interest exhibited by the response to the Scientific American articles and the ready assistance and cooperation of Russell Porter prompted Ingalls to produce the first edition of what was to become the Bible for amateur telescope making. And somebody showed me earlier a copy of that. There we go. I have a copy here of the volume 1, but it's the I think the 40th printing of it. Yeah. It's 500 pages instead of the 90 pages. The first edition, published in late 1926, like I said, was a 102-page book entitled Amateur Telescope Making, which was expanded to over 500 pages by the 24th printing of the 4th edition in 1980. Volume 1 contained many chapters written and profusely illustrated by Porter, as well as other contributors, and came to contain many photographs of telescopes built by amateurs around the world. This book was such an astounding commercial success that it was followed by 2 sequels, a Volume 2 in 1937 and Volume 3 in 1953, going into more advanced optical topics. The amateur movement had been ignited and created thousands of telescopes built by folks who often banded together to form hundreds of clubs around the country. These developments in the 1920s and 1930s generated an interest and commercial incentive for the later emergence of commercially produced poor man telescopes in the 60s and 70s, like Celestron and Meade. Meanwhile, back in Springfield, Porter had been, as usual, cogitating. Since he had returned to Springfield, he had been thinking about a commercial telescope, one that would blend his talents in art, science, and engineering with his love of nature. The fruit of this creative mind was a telescope that would be as ornamental in the garden or on the lawn as it would be useful to observe the surrounding landscapes or studying celestial objects. The Porter Garden Telescope. This telescope is of a Newtonian design with its 6-inch f4 primary mirror nestled in a bowl of bronze lotus leaves, which serves as its holder. From the side of the lotus bowl, a slender bronze leaf curves gracefully about 24 inches to a prism and eyepiece holder. Different eyepieces permitted magnifications of 25, 50, and 100. This mounting, disguised by more bronze lotus leaves, is a combination of altitude azimuth mounts and equatorial design. All parts were cast out of statuary bronze, including the massive base into which were cast the names Kepler, Newton, and Galileo. It could also be used as a sundial, a true functional work of art. Harkness liked the idea, and he owned the company, and agreed to let Porter develop it for production by the Jones and Lamson Machine Company. As a commercial telescope, it was a flop. Although the company record, this is kind of during the Depression era. Although the company records have been lost, there's no record of how many garden telescopes were built or sold, but estimates range from 75 to over 200 that were sold for $500 a piece. Today, there are very few garden telescopes known to exist, but a Vermont company, that's Telescopes of Vermont, has produced an accurate reproduction. And I was told by Mark that he said that I actually looked for how much one of those would cost. And I couldn't find a price on it. I'm not sure that there's still, this reproduction is still being made. But he said it cost $60,000 to $70,000 at that time if you wanted to buy a reproduction. Remember, the original ones sold for $500. And this one over here in the Smithsonian Museum, one of the originals, pretty good shape, isn't for sale for sure. But if you find one, snap it up. Pardon?
What year was that first sold?
The first sold in 1926, I believe it was.
$500 in 1926 was a lot of money to buy a new car.
That's true. And that's probably why they only sold 70 to 200. So again, if you're a picker, snap it up. By 1926, Porter and the Springfield Telescope members decided that since their movement had begun to catch on, and that there were other amateurs out there forming clubs and building telescopes, that it would be fun to invite them to Springfield for a weekend to exchange ideas, compare experiences, and observe in the dark skies of Breezy Hill. Thus, on the weekend of July 3rd and 4th, 1926, the first Stellafane convention was held. A modest affair with some 20 participants, mostly from New England and New York, with one from Virginia. They spent the daytime comparing telescopes, talking about mirror making, mounts, and the like. At night, they looked at the heavens under the dark Vermont skies. The gathering was a highlight of the year for the Springfield telescope makers, and at the start of a tradition that is now almost 100 years old. Stellafane, the event. It now draws about 1,000 amateurs from around the country and around the world once a year to Breezy Hill. 10 years ago, Tom Hagen and I went out there and we met several people from Australia and from Europe. And it's quite an event. If any of you have a desire to see a variety of telescope designs, that's the place to go. Stellafane, the event, was an ongoing part of Porter's life for over 20 years until his death, and his spirit lives on still in the activities of the Springfield telescope makers in the annual gathering. But now yet another individual was to play a significant role in shaping the rest of Porter's life. George Ellery Hale. Hale was the giant of astronomy in the 20th century, in that he was not only a noted solar astronomer in his own right, but he was responsible for facilitating a revolution in the studying of the cosmos by establishing several major observatories, building successively the 4 largest telescopes in the world, and staffing them with notable astronomers such as Edwin Hubble, Alan Sandage, and the like. Porter had first caught Hale's attention in 1918 when he published the first photos of the shadows shadows on the mirrors during the knife edge test in the Astrophysical Journal, edited by Hale. Porter had then further become known by Hale in 1927 when Porter requested the plans for a spectroheliograph, which had been invented by Hale. Hale had in turn become aware of Porter's articles on telescope making in the Scientific American and the Amateur Astronomer book, or Amateur Telescope Making book. In early 1928, Ingalls from Scientific American arranged a dinner for the 3 of them, for Hale, Porter, and himself in New York City, in which Porter had impressively shared his ideas with Hale about large telescopes, illustrating them with quick sketches on napkins, the menu, and any piece of paper handy. After an interview in Springfield with several of Hale's associates, Porter received a telegram from Hale dated November 17, 1928, asking him to come to California and join the team which was being assembled to construct what would become the largest telescope in the world, the 200-inch Hale telescope at Mount Palomar in California. Porter's humility was tested. This now 56-year-old self-taught amateur telescope maker and former Arctic explorer was being asked to join the largest and most ambitious telescope project in history. So Porter moved to California. Hale had just received a $6 million grant from the Rockefeller Foundation to build a 200-inch telescope. He now had to figure out how to do it and was building a team to do just that. Porter would spend the next 20 years of his life with profound contributions to this endeavor. His title in the organization was Associate in Optics and Instrument Design, but his activities were wide-ranging, involving site selection, surveying architectural layouts and building designs, designing and building ancillary telescopes and instruments, and the like. Porter's major contributions, though, were probably to help Hale's team of engineers and scientists visualize the many problems in designing a massively complex device which required sometimes ingenious solutions. Throughout the 20-year program, it was often one of Porter's more than 1,000 magnificent drawings or sketches, which allowed educated decisions to be made many times before expensive hardware had been created. Many of these drawings were cutaways, a skill that Porter was a master of. He had the uncanny skill of producing extremely accurate perspective drawings of complex mechanisms before or while they are being made. As an aside and a personal example of this talent is shown in this Porter drawing, which was produced in 1936 of Tower 2 at McMath-Hulbert Observatory in Lake Angeles, only 20 miles from here. Robert McMath had been consulting with George Ellery Hale regarding its design and construction, and sometime during that process, Porter made this drawing, which reveals this complex structure in amazing detail, as any of you who have been out to McMath-Hulbert can testify to. Porter's specific involvements in the Hale telescope project are too numerous to recount. But as a key member of the team and a close confidant of Hale until his death in 1938, some of the more notable contributions are noted below. Porter personally did the plannings and design for the 3 initial buildings on the Caltech campus: the astrophysics lab, the machine shop, and the optical shop. All very large and complicated buildings were designed by Porter. Porter participated in the site selection process for this new telescope at locations throughout the Southwest, and he designed the telescopes that were used in that site selection process. There were 10 of them built. Once Mount Palomar was selected as the site of the new observatory, Porter went into the uninhabited plateau and camped alone in a tent with his surveying equipment and proceeded to lay out the plans for all of the future buildings, including the observatory itself and the monastery where the astronomers lived on Mount Palomar. A major engineering challenge for this massive telescope was what type of mounting system should it have? The final split yoke or horseshoe design adopted was an adaptation of a proposal by Porter in an article in March 1918 edition of Popular Astronomy entitled a, quote, new form of mounting for large reflectors, end of quote. Porter went back east most summers to visit his old friends and attend the Stellafane gatherings. He would regale them with reports on the progress of the 200-inch telescope. During these visits, Hale asked Porter to visit the various suppliers involved with the program to assess the status of their work. Because of his comprehensive knowledge of all aspects of the project, Porter's reports back to Hale were very valuable inputs to the program. After the delivery of the huge 200-inch, 17.5-ton mirror, I forget what did you say the mirror lab?
20 tons.
They were what?
20 tons of glass.
20 tons. Well, this is only 200-inch, but 17.5-ton mirror. After the delivery of this huge 200-inch mirror, and that's a whole story by itself of how it got transported from east to west. But after the delivery of the 17.5-ton 200-inch mirror in 1936, Porter became involved with the Herculean job of creating the proper paraboloid surface and the testing protocol required inside of the massive optical shop that Porter had designed some 6 years earlier. This process would take more than 10 years. Just think about grinding that much glass from a flat surface. To house the enormous telescope, Porter created a classic domed exterior with a very functional interior design, which included dark rooms, kitchenette, recoding chamber, and the like, but also a glassed-in observation deck for visitors to view operations. If any of you ever been out to Palomar, take that opportunity. But in the final analysis of Porter's contributions, one must come back to his visual drawings, sketches, and models. He was also a skilled model maker with his own space in the machine shop at Caltech. These visual cues efficiently resolved many issues during the 20-year program. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and the U.S. entered World War II, the staff at Caltech, along with Porter, now 70 years old, joined the war effort. Porter's talents as an illustrator were widely utilized in weapons design and training materials, and he was widely recognized as the, quote, cutaway drawing man, end of quote. However, another important contribution was more in line with his avocation. In the late 30s, as America was gearing up production for war, Ingalls and Porter recognized that a shortage existed in the ability to supply a critical optical component for anti-aircraft and field gun systems, as well as other optical applications. The Amici prism, or the roof prism, we all know of that nowadays, a difficult to craft precision optic for producing erect images. They were joined in this concern by a Porter amateur telescope maker friend, Fred Fearson from Mississippi, and they just dubbed themselves the Three Musketeers. At the 1941 Stellafane gathering, these Three Musketeers were able to recruit some 80 telescope nuts to join what was called the Amici gang. The Three Musketeers collaborated in producing a book of instructions as to how to make and test Amici prisms, and acted as a liaison between the Amici gang and the Frankfurt Arsenal, which was the government agent. This arrangement supplied 28,000 roof prisms, or a critical 10% of the requirements during the early years of World War II. During the war years, 1942 to 45, the Stellafane Convention was discontinued. When resumed in 1946, Porter traveled east, eager to see his friends at Breezy Hill. Another affair, however, awaited him in Northfield, Vermont, when he was honored by the Norwich University, where he had been a student for 1 year in 1889 and 90. He was given a Doctor of Science degree to honor his lifetime of contributions to society. Another honoree at that ceremony was Dwight David Eisenhower. Porter then once again visited with his old telescope friends from around the country in Canada at the Stellafane Conference, where he gave everybody an update on the final phases of the Hale Mount Palomar project. After the convention, he again left for California. It would be his last time on Breezy Hill. Although semi-retired, he still retained his office and participated in bringing the 200-inch telescope online, and he participated in the final testing of the optics and was one of the few participants in the entire program to get a visual peek through the giant telescope in the summer of 1948. He sent a letter back to his friends at Stellafane with regrets at not being with them. But then he reported on his view through the Hale telescope. Quote, I was looking at the Hercules cluster, M13, the globular cluster, the other night at the Cody focus with a power of about 900. The stars in the center were completely separated and so bright as to require only a few seconds of photographic exposure. By February of 1949, Porter was back working on a 6-inch achromatic objective in his basement. On February 22nd, after several visits from friends, he was stricken by several heart attacks and died. Thus, whoops, I gotta find. Thus, at 78 years old, 78 years of age, ended a life well lived, and he summed it up in his own words in a letter to a friend. Nothing gives me more satisfaction than realizing that I have helped towards giving thousands of people the pleasure of creating with their own hands a tool to unlock the wonders of the heavens. Beyond those profound sentiments, though, Russell Porter was indeed a man of many dimensions. And so now I'd like to honor Russell Porter with my usual presentation fashion with a song. This year's tune is a rewritten version of Paul McCartney's song Let It Be from the Beatles' fantastic library. Sing along if you would like. This was really a toughie song to write too, by the way. Sure, you all know the melody. You know, when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. Okay. Oops, I got the chair in the wrong position here. There we go.
You good?
I think so. I think I'm gonna do this. Hello.
Want me to hold it for you?
I think I can do it. When I think of Russell Porter, man of many qualities, he was a real explorer who prayed more to see his Arctic ventures. He learned lots about astronomy, how to use the instruments that let him see, let him see. Let him see, let him even better see that the Arctic space with scopes that let him see. The fat stars in heaven, thoughts of ingenuity. Let him plan to help his friends build scopes to better see. At Stellafane from the club, membership would always be folks who could make mirrors for telescopes to let them see, let them see. Let them see, let them things that they could never see. With their homemade telescopes, he showed them how to better see. Then he went to California You build a scope with great immensity, Palomar, behemoth, hail skip to a trust posterity. For more than 40 years, it was the largest with which man could see, 200 inches wide, so you could really better see. Let them see, let them see, let them even farther see. From the smallest to the largest order, let them see. Thank you all. If anyone has questions, I'd be happy to take a few of them. We have time. Mike.
So he came across a polar bear with a jammed rifle. How did he survive? How did he not become dinner?
How did I what?
He came across a grizzly or a polar bear with a jammed rifle.
Yeah.
How did he avoid becoming dinner?
Well, apparently this book, by the way, is a wonderful read if any of you are interested. It's profusely illustrated with portrait drawings and everything. That picture is in there. But apparently he finally was able to get the Winchester to work. First it was frozen. It was frozen. The hammer would not work on it, but apparently in his desperation, he messed around with it a little bit. And apparently the polar bears are really not really aggressive as we might think they were, at least on this occasion. He had many run-ins with polar bears after that too. But this is really an interesting read for anybody if you're interested in that at all.
Yeah, the meat sheep prism or the roof prism.
Yeah.
That's basically a pentaprism that would be like in a single lens reflex, isn't it? It looks the same.
I think you're probably right, but the two terms I've heard to describe it were amici prism, invented by some Italian guy named Amici, and roof prism. And I've seen binoculars in particular that have roof prism. It's made to provide an upright image instead of an inverted image.
You can buy diagonals that are Michi prisms that basically it's designed so like a regular diagonal, left to right is reverse, up and down is correct. On a Michi prism, it's correct.
I think the problem beginning World War II, probably most of the Amici prisms were built by German companies or maybe Japanese companies. And the few American companies that were able to do that, there are so many surfaces that had to be done so precisely that there weren't enough American companies that could produce the number of guns and stuff they were trying to produce. Anyone else? An interesting person, Russell Porter. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jim. Okay, so our next meeting is Thursday, September 19th, next week at Macomb Community College South Campus, the day before Astronomy at the Beach. WAS's next star party will be September 28th. And we meet afterwards at the Redcoat Tavern for gastronomy and chat. So hope to see you there. And with that, the meeting is done. Good night and clear skies. And all right, everyone. Night.
Good talk, Jim.
Thank you.